Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. April 29th, 2020. Still in the pandemic, so everybody's still self-isolating, quarantine, whatever the case might be. Hopefully everybody's doing well. The beer I have this week is a Freudian Slip. And if you followed me last week, you heard that I was really looking forward to this beer. This is a barley wine. That's a beer I've never had before. I've always wanted to try it. So now I have my chance. I'll read the label. It is from Evil Twin Brewing. Now the thing is about Evil Twin Brewing, they're a brewery that doesn't brew. They're known as what's sometimes called a gypsy, a nomad, or a contract brewery. Basically, they don't brew their own beer, but they collaborate with other breweries to sell beer or distribute beer under their label. That's my understanding. Now some gypsy or contract brewery, some of them, what they'll do is they'll brew beer at another brewery that has space. So say if my brewery, I have capacity for 1,000,000 liters, but I'm only using half of that, then a contract brewery might come in and brew with my extra space. But with Evil Twin, it's my understanding they don't brew at all. They just collaborate with other breweries. Alright, so as I said, it's a barley wine ale, 10.3% alcohol. Now that's pretty strong for a beer. And barley wines in general are normally between 8 to 12. And as a general rule, they're the strongest beers that you can get. Now I'm sure others have tried to do IPAs or double IPAs or triples or Belgians quadruples. But my understanding is barley wines, as a general rule, the highest alcohol beer. And not much else on the label. They say brewed by Evil Twin and then distributed by 12%. Let's see, like I said, my understanding was the other way around, but there you go. And a little story on the side that says, Did you also at some point in your life get seduced by promising words like probably, and then in brackets not, the best in the world, it doesn't really, in brackets, work every time. This American Barley Ale says how it is. It's intense, attention-seeking, hoppy, and definitely your kind of beer. A beer with a big ego, drive, and a huge thirst for recognition. So there you go. It's American Barley Wine. And there's English Barley Wine and American Barley Wine. My understanding is the American versions tend to be a little bit more hoppy. Now I'm sure there's probably other things to it than that. As you can see, the glass I'm using is a snifter glass. And these are normally used for cognacs, things like that, but they are sometimes used for high alcohol beers. So that's what I'm going to use today. And they say these are really good glasses for testing beers. Like how how you see wine sampling when they just have a little bit. Well, the same idea they say with testing beer of any kind, it can be a good glass, not for sampling, not drinking. Basically, you get a small amount, you're able to give it a little swirl, whatnot. Alright, so let's pour it up. Let's see what we got. Not a lot of carbonization, however, quite the bit of aroma. I can smell from here. I'm not even close to the thing. Wow. You can definitely smell the alcohol. Getting another thing there too. It's kind of fruity, maybe. I think is what I'm getting. I'm not quite sure. Like I said, not a lot of carbonization, but a bit there. Wow. That is strong. Now for me, I'm a beer drinker. I don't drink liquor as a general rule. I might have, a glass every now and then. I'm not a big wine person either. Beer is my thing. So I don't like a lot of hard alcohol, and I can definitely taste the alcohol in this. Wow. That is really, really strong. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to tell you the truth. Whew. Even afterwards, you take a shot of a liquor. Afterwards, you can feel it in your throat, kind of a warm feeling. I'm even getting that. Alright, so a little bit about barley wines in general. They're the root of barley wine, it's a British thing. Originally it was farmhouse breweries, so basically those with money that had the farms, normally attached to the farmhouse, they would have a brewery. So it wasn't known as your blue collar drink, it was mostly the aristocrats, basically because it was expensive to make. It was complex and hard to make. And because of that, it didn't sell cheaply. It was also what they call a first runnings beer. And what that means is that back in the day when you had your mash, which is when you're starting your beers, you'd run your liquor. This isn't 100% technical, but I'll give you the gist of it. Basically, you run your liquid through your mash to get your mixture for the beer. Now, a lot of times what they would do is they'd do it once, and that would be called the first runnings. And generally, the first runnings were always harder alcohol or higher alcohol content. You get most of the sugars and whatnot. And then once they did that, they would do either a second or third running through the same mash. I believe that's the way it goes. So, but the first one was normally always the strongest. This one's 10.3% alcohol. Barley wines, as a general rule, they're known to age well. So most beers, like you want to drink them fairly fresh. However, the higher alcohol is kind of like a fine wine. They age. So barley wines you can actually age. And some breweries might recommend aging. Others possibly not. That smell, I know, and I just can't put my finger on it. I'll say right off the get-go, I can't see me finishing that, and there's not too many beers I don't finish, but once again, I'm not a wine drinker, and I'm not a hard liquor drinker. Now, I said barley wine, although the name implies wine, just to clarify, it is a beer, it's not a wine. Beers, most people know, they're the product of grains, whether it's barley, wheat, rice in the case, whereas by wine, as your typical wine, it's grapes, so that's a difference. Even sake, rice wine, is more of a beer than a wine because it's rice. Just a little bit of knowledge there. As I said, they're complex beers. They're known to be difficult to brew. They're known to be full-bodied, rich. I'm definitely getting that. They say the color deep gold to brown. I'm somewhere in between there. General, they say it's a complex aroma and flavor, and I can see that. For me, I don't think it's quite my thing. They say you might get hints of toast, caramel, toffee, or molasses. Also possible dried fruit notes such as raisin, prunes, or figs. And I say a lot of times it's almost like a similar aroma to like wine or like a sweet sherry. And quite often you get a bitter finish. And I think that would probably be more so for American barley wine just because they tend to be a little bit hoppier. Now, I got to give this one a rating, and my ratings, 1 being a drain pour, don't like it, can't finish it. A 2 being, not a fan, but I'll finish it. A 3 being a good beer, a 4 being a very good beer, and a 5 being the best beer I've ever had. With that being said, I've already said it, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this beer. I have my doubts. I'm almost positive not. So with that being said, it's probably going to be a 1. And that's the lowest rating I've ever given. And I got a feeling that it's not necessarily this particular beer, but it's probably going to be this particular style of beer that just doesn't cut it for me. It's too strong. I want to say too complex, but too complex wouldn't cause me to not want to drink it. The high alcohol content doesn't do it for me at all. And for me, the flavor is a little bit too intense. And I keep going back to kind of like a liquor flavor, and that just doesn't do for me. If you're a drinker of hard liquor, whether it's rum, whiskey, cognac, whatever it might be, you might love these. And if you do, by all means, let me know. But for me, it just doesn't do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try one more. See. as soon as I bring it up, I can smell it. I mean, as soon as I poured it, I could smell it. As soon as I start bringing it to my face, I can smell it, and I don't like the aroma. That's just my personal thing. I hate to do it, folks. The first time ever. It's a drain pour. I cannot finish that. So there you go, folks. That says it all for the Evil Twin Brewing Freudian Slip. I gotta give it a 1.0. Wasn't my cup of tea. I'm hoping I can find another barley wine and just give it a try. Maybe I'll find one that I like, but sorry to say, 1.0. There you go, folks. Hopefully you can join me next week for our next beer. I think we're going to start the Scottish beer month for May. We got 4 beers that I want to try. And that's about it. So until next brew, enjoy responsibly. Stay safe. Self-isolate, wash your hands, and let's get through this together. Cheers.